Welcome to the concluding episode of Trump betraying Israel. It is a very sad program to bring, but my job is to inform our listeners as to what I perceive is going to happen. Now, I will add to this program a series on what the prophets have revealed in this regard, because my conclusions regarding Trump betraying Israel. Well, we have a Wookiee issue here, a little gag reflex from having a little too much cold iced tea, I think. But I think we're fine now. The insight that I was dealing with that caused me to recognize the moment that Trump won the last election is that he was going to be the Neville Chamberlain, the one who would sell out and betray Israel for a peace prize, and that his Czechoslovakia would be Israel, and that it would lead directly to war, first in Israel and then world war, was because it was foretold very vividly in the prophets, particularly in Yahowah, Isaiah. And it's presented along with the timing of all of this in Isaiah 17 and 18. I have shared, because it is so vital to the upcoming harvest of Shabuah, the description that Isaiah provides that leads us through this betrayal, where the two-state dissolution is imposed upon Israel. And the timing of that is on Shabuah. Shabuah, 7 years before the return of our Messiah and the Son of God, our King, David, and Yahowah. So we know the date certain that it will be implemented by, and we know because of Yahowah 18 that the perpetrator is going to be America. So it didn't take much to go from there to say, well, Trump will still be president this time next year, and therefore it is Donald Trump who is the one who betraying Israel. Now, since that time, we've had 25 bold, blunt, undeniable clues that it, in fact, has already been decided that he has made that decision and that he will go forward with it. And I know that there are still those who want to believe otherwise because, well, in the first term, Trump did things that were beneficial to Israel, and that is certainly true, but not this time. The prophets have spoken. They are never wrong. Now, as I spend most evenings, I'm a really fun guy, I guess, but before I go fall asleep in the evening, and if I were to wake up and be sleepless at all during the night, on my phone, I have my first 3 apps on my phone are Israeli newspapers. And I like to not just only read the articles, so I'm familiar with what's happening in Israel. It's the people and place that I'm devoted to. But what I would also do is to read the responses to every article. And if you go back just 4 or 5 weeks ago, when I was the only person saying that Trump is the next Neville Chamberlain and Israel is the next Czechoslovakia, and the next war will be World War III as opposed to World War II, there wasn't even 5% of those who were responding to news articles by any one of the 3 or 4 leading Israeli news sources that were critical of Trump, that thought there was any chance that Trump would betray them. Well, over the past month, that has changed radically. And now in those, and these are very different kind of chat rooms than what we find on X, for example. On X, it's a sea of belligerence and anti-Semitic hate, and of the average IQ of the person posting it doesn't get much beyond using the F bomb as their primary go to verb. It's pathetic, but not on these chat rooms. The people who write for them are articulate, they're bilingual, they're vested in Israel, they care deeply about their country, and they are students of the news, and they are students of history. So it is an interesting litmus test to read what they have to say. And I will tell you that they have gone from 99% hailing Trump almost as a messianic figure to now 80% realize that Trump has only one agenda: Trump. And around 60% of Israeli news responders recognize now that they're being sold out to the highest and baddest bidder, with 40% still wanting to believe that Trump wouldn't sell them out to the Saudis. Now, that's a major shift in a matter of a month or two, but to a person, they know that the next few weeks will tell the tale, and that they are very likely being set up, and that all signs are negative thus far. I just concluded a chat with my financial advisor. I pay no attention to the monies that I made long ago, and they're just all managed for me. What enables me to do this, it's the only reason I've been able to devote every waking hour, 100,000 hours to learning what Yahowah wants us to know and then sharing it with you, and still investing in all of the tools that are necessary to do this. The only reason I've been able to do that and devote all of my attention to it is that once upon a time I was reasonably successful as a businessman. And so I was talking to the man that manages that funds. I'd probably talk to him once every other year, so we're not exactly chit-chatty. I just said, in the financial community, what is the perception of Donald Trump? And he said, it's that he's crazy, that that most of the things that he's saying and doing are not thought through. He has no clue of the unintended consequences. He'll say one thing one day and the opposite the next day. You have no idea of what's he's going to say, what he's going to do, and he has no idea of the consequence of what he's saying. And his tariff plan was ill-conceived. It was a jumbled mess. And at very best, you can say that since it makes no sense, the only thing that it could possibly have done is to set Trump up to negotiate, because he thrives on winning. And I mentioned, yes, but winning is always bad in any negotiation. And that's a surprise to most people that haven't spent a lifetime in business as I have. You never negotiate in business to win. You negotiate in business to have a mutually beneficial arrangement, a deal where everybody prevails. And it is only then that the deal works. It's only then that you don't have to have lawyers try to enforce it. It's only then that things prevail. And that's not Trump's mindset. And so at the very best, we have something that's bad. And at the worst, for example, this notion that we're going to raise tariffs so that jobs come back to America and America makes things. As I talked to this man who's fairly well established in the economic investment circles, he said there is no chance whatsoever that's going to happen. That train left the station long, long ago. America doesn't have the workforce for it. It does not have the infrastructure for it. Doesn't have the mentality for it. Doesn't have all of the systems necessary for that to occur. That was a long time ago, faraway kingdom, never going to happen. And so what's the purpose of the tariffs? Because all they're doing, it's another way for the government to tax its citizens, because 100% of those tariffs are paid by citizens. Like when he said China and Walmart ought to eat the tariffs, it's obnoxious. It just shows that Trump really has no understanding of business at all. He's mostly a failed uh, resort casino investor, multiple bankruptcies, and he's only solvent because of the money that has been given to him, some 16 billion by the Saudis, the Qataris, and the United Arab Emirates. Uh, you can't have any concept of business to make that kind of a statement. It's just stunningly ignorant, and the fact that the MAGAs go, "Yeah, that's our guy, man. Take it to him," means that the MAGites have a collective IQ of about 4. It's pathetic, and people in the investment world know it. So, the minority, as I say now, of Israelis believe that Trump is committed to Israel. And they're beginning to recognize that he's positioning Israel for the two-state solution. And the very fact that he's doing this without the involvement of Egypt and Jordan, because Egypt and Jordan didn't capitulate when he wanted to build emerald cities there for Fakistinians to be free and prosperous. Trump gets irritable, and if you don't capitulate to Trump, he's vicious in his personal attacks, and so he's isolating them from this, because also he wants to give full credit to MBS so that he strokes MBS's ego to retain the petrodollar status, because without the petrodollar, America's trade relations now are so strained that we're losing the influence needed to retain the reserve currency status, and it's only through the reserve currency status that our fiat currency and deficit can be financed through quantitative easing, the perception of the creation of money, which is basically inflation, to fund the $40 trillion US deficit. And when you put the reserve currency at risk by all of the issues that Trump has caused internationally in trade with his tariffs, the only salvation, and it's only a temporary Band-Aid for U.S. solvency, is to have Saudi Arabia give some credence to the continuation of the petrodollar, which is largely why he's doing all of these things, that and $16 billion of bribes, of course. And so they recognize now that it's likely a fait accompli. And because there's just residue of trust with Trump from his first term, and the rhetoric that, no matter where you are, unless you're a progressive, Trump is going to say things that you're going to say, yeah, that's good. I like that. Now the next day he's going to say just the opposite, but you can cling to the thing that you like and not worry about the thing that you don't like, if you're not really a thinking person with Donald Trump. And that's a lot what's happening in Israel, so that they still think that maybe he won't betray them. And if he does propose a two-state solution, the majority of Israelis want normalization with Saudi Arabia. Of course, it would be disastrous, but they want it nonetheless. And that's going to require a Fakistinian state of terror carved out of the heart of Israel. And once that happens, Israel has just put a knife in its own heart, and the country is not survivable. Now, what I know is that what Dode revealed to Daniel, and what Yahowah conveyed through Yahshua, and what Yoel foretold, their narratives affirm that Israel will be forced by many nations, led by the United States. There's over 50 descriptive terms that are used in Isaiah to describe the United States, into surrendering land to its enemies, and that this will lead to a catastrophic war. They present the timing such that it concludes and coincides with the time of Jacob's troubles, which is the beginning of on Shabuah, 7 years prior to King Dode's return, which will be on Kippurim in 2033. So you're going from May 2026 as to when the two-state solution will be imposed by that time, and that Israel will be enveloped in the worst war imaginable, not just the worst war in its history, a war worse than 1948, 1967, 1973, and October 7th combined, with death tolls greater than the Holocaust. That's the level of calamity that Yoel and Yahowah are foretelling. And the beginning of this is May of 2026. It's all over by October 2033. So while the prophets have delivered very dire news, there is a silver lining. And the silver lining is that Israel, you've been nincompoops for a very long time. That's a technical term. You've been flat out arrogant and obnoxious pursuant to God. I'm right now in the midst of translating and commenting on Numbers 11. When you were so obnoxious that Moshe said, "Why don't you just kill me, God? These people are impossible. No one can bear this burden. They're that irascible, that impossible to be around." And God agreed. He says that I agree with you. They're miserable. And you've been miserable to God. You have rejected Yahowah for a very long time. And for you to pretend that, oh no, our rabbis, man, they still got the yeshivas, they got their Talmud studies, they're being religious 24/7, bullcrap. Yahowah despises them. The biggest issue he has with you is you're religious. The second biggest issue with him is you're political. And the third biggest issue he has with you is you've erased his name. And the fourth biggest issue with him is you're parading around under a star of Bar Kokhba, as opposed to his menorah, and as opposed to recognizing the contributions his son made for your salvation. He's got so many issues with you, you no longer observe the Moed Mikre. You've either forgotten them or convoluted them, twisted them. And without them, there is no salvation. There's no relationship with Yahowah. You don't even know what the terms and conditions are of the covenant anymore. So no, according to God, you've been obnoxious. And he ought to know. He's known you for a long time, 3,000 plus years. And so the silver lining and all of that is that times are getting so rough for Jews in Israel that finally they'll have no other place to turn. And it's only when Israel has no other place to turn that they finally realize that the rabbis have been the problem, finally realize that their politicians, even the IDF, can't be trusted. Just like the IDF couldn't be trusted on 10/7. They did a miserable, miserable job. And even now they're turning the whole world against you, pursuing an impossible objective. And so Israel's finally going to wake up to that. Can't trust the IDF, can't trust the Mossad, can't trust the Shin Bet, can't trust any political party or politician, can't trust the rabbis, can't trust America as a friend anymore, can't trust anybody in Europe as a friend anymore, can't trust the diaspora Jews, certainly can't trust the progressives, can't trust the Haredim. Israel's backs up against the wall. You've got murderous Muslims perpetrating all manner of calamity. You've got the world embargoing you. The only hope is going to be Yahowah. And while he has always been the best option for humanity, you've rejected him for all this time. And finally, in the end, it's all of this trauma that's going to bring you back. It's the only thing that's going to get through to you. Now, my job is to get the attention of those who are willing to listen between now and then. We have a harvest to attend to in Shavua, and my job is to wake you up so that you attend to it. And that's why I'm telling you so much information, because you're going to find out that what I'm telling you about Donald Trump is true. You're going to find out that what I'm telling you about the two-state solution is true. What I'm telling you about doing a deal with Saudi Arabia, and the consequence is true. You're going to find out that this continuing to bomb Gaza, thinking that you're fighting Hamas when you're in fact fighting Islam, and that all Gazans are Muslims, therefore you can't beat Hamas, is true. You're going to find that the next 10/7 is going to be at least 100 times worse. You're going to find everything that I'm telling you to be accurate. And every time that I have predicted something and it's turned out to be true and told you about it and explained it to you with enough of those, you're going to listen. But beyond all of that, here I've proved to you the proper pronunciation of Yahweh's name and reintroduced his name to you. I have demonstrated that there are 5 conditions of the covenant and laid them out for you so you can capitalize on it. I've told you what the 5 benefits are of the covenant and how those benefits are derived from the first 3 Moed Mikra. I've given you the greatest gift has been ever given to the Jewish people. The realization that Dod David is not only the former and returning king, not only your Messiah and the Son of God, not only a prophet and a shepherd, but he's the one who came back in his second of 3 lives to fulfill Pesach, Matzah, and Bikurim, giving you life, perfecting you, ridding you of the guilt of religion and politics, so that you can be part of God's family and live forever with him, enriched and empowered, emancipated from all of these constraints, and enabled by God. That is the purpose of the Moed Mikra. It's what you will gain if you join us on the Shavua harvest. It is what you will gain if you join us on Teruah for that final ingathering and gleaning of Jews. It is even what you'll discover if you're part of that final remnant that is either in or brought to Jerusalem on the Shabbat of Teruah, September 24th, 2033, year 6000 Yah, during the sacrifice of the red heifer to finally resolve the issues of the adulterous woman that Yahweh divorced long ago, that he will now offer to be betrothed to your returning king, Dod, David. All of this is proven for you in the books that are behind me. All of it is revealed. All of it is delineated. It's amplified translations, a very unique style of presenting God's word so that you could validate everything that I'm saying, rendering the text from the Dead Sea Scrolls, ridding everything of the diacritical markings of the rabbis and the Masoretes so that you would know the full extent of every word that's being used, fully exploring the stems and the moods and the conjugations to convey the full intent of God's message to you. And in so doing, in the midst of copious amounts of commentary where I explain the history of each of these things and what other things they relate to, there are thousands of insights that I'm offering to you that have never been heralded before, and they're all in these books behind me. And I'm doing my best over the course of now what has been 4 months of sharing with you everything that I have learned about Yahweh, about his beloved son Dod, about the covenant, the Moed Mikra, these restoring witnesses to the invitations that Yahweh has offered to call us out and to welcome us into his arms, to explain the timeline of the prophets so that you know exactly what's happened when and where we are on it and what's going to happen next. We're making all of this available to you because the sane thing, the beneficial thing, the right thing is for many of you to capitalize on what we're saying now. Learn as much as you can and then engage with your fellow Israelites to have as many of them benefit from this as possible. Join us on the Shavua harvest of standing grain. Contribute to the quality and the size of Yahweh's eternal family. And do so again prior to Teruah. This is what I'm encouraging, is why I'm telling this story. I have no other reason to tell the story of what Trump is doing to betray Israel than to convey what I know from the prophets, so that you're prepared and so that my message with you continues to resonate. Their narratives affirm that there's going to be the sacrifice of Israeli land, where Israel is thinned at the waist, where 70% of Israelis live, making the country indefensible, and that this is going to occur on or prior to May 22nd, 2026. And it's going to usher in a horrendous time of trouble for Israel that will not conclude until 2033 and the 24th of September, with God returning with Dode on the 2nd of October. That's the future. The good news is the homecoming, the family reunion are joyous. There are going to be many Israelites there. There's going to be a wonderful remnant of God's people that will be spared. The earth is going to be returned and restored to the conditions found in the Garden of Eden. We're going to camp out together and enjoy life with our King and with our God for 1,000 years before we're unleashed to explore the universe. Israel prevails. Her enemies are all expunged from the earth. There'll be no more religion, no more politics, no more militarism, no more conspiracies. Just the covenant relationship with Yahowah. However, between now and there, as the heart of Israel is forfeited, 2 out of every 3 Jews are going to succumb to this rising tide of anti-Semitism and this rage of Muslims. 2 out of every 3. And the rest of the world's not going to fare that well. This war that Trump will bring upon Israel will infect the whole world. We're headed to world war. Billions will die. Economies will collapse. And it will all transpire over the next 8.5 years. So there are now those who are claiming that Trump can't undermine Israel on behalf of his allegiance to his new Islamic financiers because, well, Trinity Broadcasting Network host turned political appointment Mike Huckabee loves Israel because his Jesus came from Israel. But to do so, Mike has to oppose his scriptures because therein, Jews are demonized and dehumanized, and he knows it, revealing that if he is willing to conduct or contradict, I should say, his ungod, why not his ungod's former people and nation? His religion did so. It'll be easy for him to do so. Moreover, Trump is famous for keeping members of his own team in the dark and even turning on them. What I'd like to share next is the evidence behind my claim that Trump is engaged in a criminal enterprise. I call it Trump Criminal Enterprise, Inc. And I began this post by saying that I'm amused when MAGAs brag, as they do, that Congress is being paid to do nothing, while Trump signs executive orders without their support, thereby doing everything for free. But what they miss is that the presidential salary of $400,000 is chump change compared to the $16 billion Trump and company have recently received from the Islamic dictators. The Trump organizations, owned and managed by Donald and Eric Trump, struck a $5.5 billion deal to build a resort in Qatar, the Bank of Islamic Terror. Now, that is despite the obvious conflict of interest of a president shaping U.S. policy for personal financial gain. It's probably impeachable. This deal brought the known Islamic funding of the president, his private businesses, and his family to 16 billion and rapidly growing. And that's only what has been disclosed, nothing that has gone into undisclosed bank accounts. That is ever so slightly more than the 220,000 that Libya's Muammar Gaddafi paid Billy Beer founder Billy Carter, or the 20 million each that Bush and Obama received from the Saudis for their contributions to the kingdom after they left office. Quote, "We are incredibly proud to expand the Trump brand into Qatar through this exceptional collaboration with Qatari DR and Dar Global," a spokesman for the family business exclaimed. End quote. In addition to Saudi partner Dar Global, the planned resort of the Qatari capital of Doha will be developed by a Qatari company called Qatari DR, which is owned by the Qatari government, also known as the Emir of Qatar, Hamad bin Khalifa Al Thani, the chairman of the Bank of Islamic Terrorism and of anti-Semitism worldwide. As for Dar Global, it is owned by Dar Al Arkan Real Estate Development, and it's founded and owned by the Saudi royal family, with institutional investors owning about 5%, like Vanguard, BlackRock, UBS, Northern Trust, State Street, and Teachers Annuity Association, collectively controlling 10% of the company. After U.S. President Donald Trump announced that he would be visiting Qatar during his Middle East trip, many wondered why he chose to stop at the Islamic country most closely identified with funding Hamas, Hezbollah, and the anti-Israel agenda and protests on college campuses and streets worldwide, all while ignoring American allies such as Israel, even Egypt and Turkey. But now we know. It's just business. Ironically, or more accurately, hypocritically, illegally, and immorally, the deal in Qatar was announced while the president was going after Qatari funding of the Ivy League universities in the United States, which encouraged anti-Semitism and anti-Israeli protests to take place on their campuses after the Hamas massacre of October 7th and the ensuing war. Turns out progressive liberals in academia are exceedingly easy to bribe. They refer to such things as grants. Now, this wasn't the first or the last of its kind. It follows many other deals made before Trump was sworn in, including one for a golf resort in Vietnam late last year with a firm with ties to the Communist Party. Trump's son-in-law, business partner, and White House political negotiator, Jared Kushner, received $2 billion directly from Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman through his sovereign wealth fund, known as the PIF, despite having no experience in private equity investing. No experience in private equity investing, and yet he was given $2 billion to start a private equity firm. He received the transfer of this $2 billion within 6 months of leaving the White House. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, who serves as the chairman of the Public Investment Fund and is its owner, personally intervened to approve the investment and overruled the panel of advisors who called the sum unsatisfactory in all respects. Kushner developed a close relationship with MBS while he served as White House advisor during Donald Trump's first presidency. helping to approve the 110 billion weapons sale to the kingdom after it faced public backlash for the murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi, which the Department of National Intelligence later reported was directed by the Crown Prince himself. But Kirshner and Trump took care of that little problem for MBS, denying the evidence and then raising MBS's worldwide profile and esteem. Bribes matter. Around the same time, the Public Investment Fund of Saudi Arabia also invested $1 billion in Liberty Strategic Capital, a private equity firm set up by former Secretary Steve Mnuchin after Trump left office. Thereafter, Trump's Middle East envoy, Steve Witkoff, received a $623 million investment to bail him out of the failed purchase and management of the Park Lane Hotel in New York City. It was funded by the Qatari Investment Authority, the fiefdom's sovereign wealth fund, a month before the Qataris sponsored the Hamas terrorist raid in Israel. 1 month prior. Showing his appreciation in his first official act, Witkoff demanded to see Netanyahu on the Shabbat and told the Israeli prime minister that Trump expected Israel to capitulate to the ceasefire on his and Qatari terms. The concerns the prime minister had previously told Trump were life and death issues for Israel's survival were no longer of any concern to the president, Witkoff stated. Then, right on cue, Hamas sponsor and advocate, Qatari Prime Minister Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdul Rahman bin Jassim Al Thani credited Witkoff in a speech announcing the deal, albeit one usurped by Trump's earlier proclamation that an epic ceasefire had been reached. Yes, when the financiers of Islamic terror and of Hamas tell you that the deal happened because Witkoff did as they demanded, you know you have a problem. But there's more. Because after winning a second term, Trump received funding in excess of $3.5 billion for a soaring Trump Tower in the Saudi capital of Riyadh, of which Trump is superfluous, of course, other than the influence acquired. Trump isn't providing any of the finance. It's all coming from Saudi Arabia. He isn't providing the land. Saudi Arabia. He isn't providing the construction company. Saudi Arabia. He is not providing the architects. Saudi Arabia. He is not managing the building. Saudi Arabia. All Trump is doing is getting money and having his name put on the top and the bottom of a splashy new building, which plays to his ego as well as to his pocketbook. Now, there is another Trump Tower and resort being built and funded in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, where the Trump Grand Edifice will be gilded in glittering gold. The Trump-branded Oman project is valued at $4 billion in the United Arab Emirates, and they are all being managed and constructed by Dar Global, meaning that Trump isn't the builder, the management company, or the financier, just the beneficiary of the funds and prestige. Now, if that wasn't already overtly gluttonous, then the Trump Organization announced the launch of the Trump International Hotel and Tower in Dubai, the capital of the United Arab Emirates. During the planning phase, Donald Trump stated, When I look at the potential sites for real estate investment, I concentrate on location, location, location. And this is the best location, not only in Dubai, but in the whole of the Middle East, except he's not buying it. He's being bought. There is no correlation, but in addition to landing Air Force One in Saudi Arabia to visit with MBS, Trump is flying off to his new BFF and business partner in Doha, Qatar, after meeting with the Emir Sheikh Tamim Al Thani. Then on May 15th, the Trump dollar train will arrive in Abu Dhabi and meet with Emirati dictator Mohammed bin Zayed. Ain't that swell? Now, following the remarkable success of the Trump International Oman, this is a quote, as well as our most recent ventures in Dubai and Jeddah, we are thrilled to announce 2 additional properties in Riyadh. Eric Trump, president's son, who oversees the company's real estate interest, said. Think of that. This is Eric Trump announcing at the same time that Trump is flying to Saudi Arabia, to Qatar, to the Emirates, and saying, following the success of Trump International Oman, as well as our most recent ventures in Dubai and Jeddah, we are thrilled to announce 2 additional projects in Riyadh, the capital city, the resort city of those nations that are most opposed to Israel. But talk of conflict of interest, talk about bribes. This is the most egregious series of events that have ever stained the White House of the United States. Philanderer and thief. Eric Trump, the president's son who oversees the company's real estate investments, said that the Dubai Tower of narcissism, he didn't actually say that. This is what he says, is going to be called the Trump. It's going to cost over $1 billion. And it's going to feature, affordable housing with $20 million apartments. They are, according to the Donald, inspired by Trump's tower's gold-plated residence in New York City. And Bitcoin has now been listed as an acceptable form of payment, along, of course, with the Trump cryptocurrency. It is a flagrant, deplorable, criminal, and likely impeachable act. And I would not care if it were not for the fact that Trump plans to give the heart of Israel to Saudi's crown prince as part of his deal of the millennia. Every action of President Trump reflects the will of those pulling his strings, which includes appointing Witkoff Middle East advisor, forcing Israel to capitulate to Qatar's and Hamas's terms on the previous ceasefire and hostage exchange for Hamas terrorists, the promise of Saudi and Qatari resorts in Gaza, the construction of emerald cities for Fakistanians in the Sinai and Jordan, but not, of course, in Saudi Arabia, which is the natural place for them, conducting a charade of ceasefire negotiations to end the Ukrainian proxy war with Russia and Saudi Arabia, of all places, without even inviting the Russians or Ukrainian representatives, preventing Israel from destroying Iran's nuclear bomb facilities, and then spilling the story of how he interfered to the New York Times, negotiating a meaningless deal with Iran for uranium enrichment after they have already enriched their uranium, and doing so bypassing Israel. Firing National Security Advisor Mike Waltz because he supported Israel's right to defend itself from Iranian annihilation. Telling Israel to bomb the Houthis and then forming a truce with them that expressly excluded Israel, all based on a deal proposed by the United Arab Emirates that just leave, cruise away in the aircraft carriers and the Houthis won't fire at the aircraft carriers that aren't there. They'll continue to fire at Israel, but that's what we all want, isn't it? Announcing the first presidential trip will be to visit his investors, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates, excluding Israel, announcing that Israel has frustrated him by continuing the war he claimed he would end, such that Israel is being excluded from the American deal of the millennia. And 13, after complaining that the Gazans are suffering, Trump stated that he's going to feed those who are committed to the obliteration of Israel as part of the greatest deal ever done, but exclude Israel from that process. Of course, this could all just be this colossal coincidence, and the price tag of 16 billion large and a fancy airplane could all just be unrelated. Or not. Well, my expectation now is that the pro-Israel protesters on X, that I have warned that this is coming, will finally listen. And that was pro-Israeli posters, not protesters on X, because I have warned them of this emphatically now for 6 months. America First, as a news agency, an independent source on X with 200,000 followers, just reported President Trump has cut contact with Netanyahu, slamming the Israeli prime minister and his allies for acting arrogantly while trying to push him around. Trump reportedly feels disrespected and manipulated by Netanyahu, which the Magites will interpret as grounds to hate and besmirch Netanyahu and justify whatever Trump decides to do with Israel. And while it has everything to do with Trump and his ego and nothing to do with Netanyahu, Trump is not only abandoning Israel, he is offering to sacrifice Israel to Saudi Arabia to salvage the petrodollar and perpetuate the illusion of U.S. solvency while lining his pockets with billions and billions and billions. Now, I began reporting on this inevitability the first week of November of last year, and each new day demonstrates that I have been right. The current issue is that Trump is demanding that Israel offer the concession of a Palestinian state, and we're going to see that materialize over the next weeks and months. And it will, of course, be managed by Saudi Arabia and carved out of the heart of Israel. And it will all be acclaimed and credited to Donald Trump, who will win his Peace Prize for the deal of the millennia. There's also Donald Trump's new plan for malcontent and murderous Muslims in Gaza. They have earned a special privilege for having raped, abducted, and murdered Jews. The Gaza Foundation says that Palestinians in Gaza, these malcontent Muslims, you don't have to work anymore. Not that you ever did. You don't have to stop hating Jews. You don't have to stop abducting and torturing Jews. You don't have to release the hostages. You don't have to stop terrorizing and killing Jews. You don't have to stop lying about being a Palestinian. You don't have to stop claiming that Israel is yours. You don't have to stop plotting genocide or apartheid. You don't have to stop abusing women. You don't have to stop lying. You don't have to lay down your weapons. You don't have to apologize for perpetrating mass murder. You will be well rewarded and fed so that you will have the strength to kill your Jewish neighbors. Surely, others will come in and rebuild your Islamic hellhole too, so that you can focus on more important things like religious apartheid and genocide. Steve, I'm owned and operated by Qatar, MBS, like POTUS, Witkoff, introduced the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. It supposedly bypasses Hamas without first dealing with the armed terrorist group. It even cuts out the UN because, well, the Trumpsters don't play well with others and they don't share credit. The murderous and unrepentant hostage abducting and still hostage holding Gazan Muslims evidently deserve aid that is secure, transparent, and independent. And that, of course, means independent of Israel, overtly bypassing the IDF because POTUS cares more about Muslims because of his Saudi and Qatari warlords and overlords, financiers, than he does Jews. So the perpetrators of the October 7th massacre will be rewarded while their victims will be abandoned. Billions in funding, international teams comprised of Muslims to hand out food, no questions asked. Humanitarian utopia, but for one demographic only. Remember, Pakistani lives matter. Surely the foundation for rewarding Jew killers wasn't the really, really big announcement that Trump had in mind. And it's just astonishing what we see one day to the next. Prior to making this announcement about how he was going to reward the Jew killers in Gaza, Trump says, "This is going to be one of the most important announcements that will have ever been made in many years about a certain subject, a very important subject. You'll all be here." I'm going to share one more story with you. I mentioned this in a previous video blog, that Iran has been caught using satellite images to expose a once secret Iranian nuclear site that has been operating for over a decade, above ground, reportedly producing tritium, which is a key component used in nuclear weapons, not civilian energy. Tritium is the final and essential ingredient for an effective nuclear bomb. It serves as the trigger, boosting the yield of fission bombs, and as a neutron initiator for weapons. And since it has a short half-life of just 12 years, it is made after everything else is complete. There is no reason now to negotiate a deal with Iran on preventing nuclear bombs because they already have all they need to build and launch 30 of them. Before detonation, a few grams of tritium, which is deuterium gas, is injected into a hollow pit of fissile material. The early stages of the fission chain reaction supply enough heat and compression to start the deuterium-tritium fusion. Then both fission and fusion proceed in parallel. The fission assisted by the fusion by continuing the heating and compression, and the fusion assisting in the fission with highly energetic neutrons. A typical nuclear bomb is a fission bomb where the atoms break apart. That's why you use uranium-235. But a fusion bomb, which is how the sun works, you take hydrogen, a different kind of gas, and this is what the tritium is a form of, and you fuse it together. And the combination of fission and fusion that create the most effective bomb for the buck, if you will. As the fission fuel depletes and also explodes outward, it falls below the density needed to stay critical by itself, but the fusion neutrons make the fission process faster and continue longer than it would without this boosting. Increased yield comes overwhelmingly from the increased fission as a result of the tritium fusion. The energy from the fusion itself is much smaller because the amount of fusion fuel is much smaller. But the effects of boosting include increased yield for the same amount of fission fuel, which is why they can make 30 or more bombs as opposed to 15 bombs and have much higher yields from those bombs. They'll be much more destructive. The possibility of variable yield by altering the amount of fusion tritium fuel, allowing the bomb to operate with a smaller amount of a very explosive fissile material, eliminating the risk of pre-detonation, which is always a concern when you're a suicide bomber. They don't want to pre-detonate, but many of them do, and they don't want their nuclear bombs to have a premature detonation either. And the tritium helps to control that process, and then it minimizes the overwise stringent requirements on the implosion setup, allowing for a smaller and lighter amount of high explosives to be used so that the resulting bomb fits more comfortably in the nose cone of a ballistic missile. The tritium in a warhead is continually ongoing radioactive decay, becoming unusable over time. Therefore, the boosted bombs need fresh tritium periodically. Isn't that lovely? That became known after Trump had and disclosed after Trump decided he was going to open up negotiations with Iran. This is all a farce, and it's despicable, and Israel is going to be the one victimized by it. So I wanted you to know these things. I appreciate you listening. I will do a program that explains why I know this to be true, why it is irrefutable. While I'm not speculating here, I'm sharing with you all of the evidence that affirms that the prophets got it right. But Yahowah has never got it wrong. And his detailed analysis of what America is going to do to Israel is emphatic, it's undeniable, it's irrefutable, and exceedingly clear. So we'll present that in a future program. I thank you for listening. We'll return to our normal programming tomorrow and do a program, at least one on the Chakma Chodar and at least one on appalling Twistianity. I thank you for listening. Good day.